Je m'appelle Michael, je suis de Chicago, aux États-Unis. Mais je suis arrivé en Europe pour travailler en 2008. Au début à Paris, puis à Budapest, maintenant à Vienne, avec un séjour en Italie aussi. Et je suis très heureux d'être ici à IMéRA. Merci beaucoup pour l'invitation et pour cette opportunité. Okay, but I didn't know what exactly to prepare for this, so I'll give you kind of a general introduction of the kind of things that I'm doing, because maybe some of that also interests you, and then I will talk more in specific detail about the project that I'm going to carry out. So I'm an economist, and in Vienna, at Central European University in Vienna, and I'm a research affiliate also at the Democracy Institute in Budapest, which was newly created in the wake of the university moving to Vienna to take advantage of the beautiful facilities that we still have in Budapest. Where I teach in the School of Public Policy to non-economists, actually. So I'm teaching kind of the mandatory introductory class in economics for public policy makers, public sector economics, a very quantitative class, applied regression analysis to master's and PhD students, and a PhD class in the political science department called Domestic Politics in the Global Economy. And this class I'll actually teach at Aix-Marseille School of Economics to their PhD students in April. So I'm really looking forward to that. I should say that my connection with Aix-Marseille School of Economics began about 10 years ago. I have a co-author who's a professor in the economics department there. So I've had some off and on contact with Aix-Marseille University for about 10 years now, which hopefully I'll be able to continue this spring. So economists, we tend to kind of bounce around to different topics rather than really dig deep into one specific topic. So I will give you kind of just a brief flavor of the kind of topics that I'm currently working on. The first, and the one which I've done the most work on recently, is kind of trying to understand the dynamic relationship between the evolution of political institutions, or devolution, and economic inequality. Yeah. So this is a very quantitative project where we look at historical data on the quality of political institutions and various forms of economic inequality, be it income, wealth, education, whatever. And we try to identify which kind of macroeconomic and socioeconomic variables are correlated with either improvements in political institutions or deteriorations in political institutions. Yeah. So now it was really, being someone who's interested in the dynamics of political institutions made our experience in Budapest particularly interesting to witness, because these things, institutions are fluid, and we kind of tend to assume that they're not. And so I really like this line of research. The political economy of evidence-based policy making. So under what circumstances do policymakers use evidence, use data to inform their policy-making decisions? Under what circumstances do they not? So this is kind of a meta-study of randomized controlled trial experiments. So we looked at the universe of randomized controlled trial experiments, which are tools that development agencies such as the World Bank use to learn about development policy. And we coded up characteristics of the universe of randomized controlled trial experiments, and then looked for political variables which correlated with incidence of RCTs. So one of the conclusions from this research is that evidence can and is used politically, which maybe doesn't come as a huge surprise to many of you, but we've demonstrated this quantitatively. Historical legacies of institutional quality and social trust. This is the one that I'm going to talk in more detail about, so I'll skip the introduction for now. And immigration and social norm adaptation. So this is the project that I was accepted at IMéRA to do, but unfortunately, due to COVID, my Italian partners have been unable to access the data required to carry out this project. So I'm kind of shifting gears a bit, and I'm going to work with colleagues at Aix-Marseille School of Economics to redefine this particular project a bit from what I had applied with. Okay, so I'd like to say maybe just 2 or 3 minutes on the project that I'm going to be principally carrying out this spring. And I will kind of try to get into some more details details and background of this kind of research in 2 weeks' time when we when we meet again for a seminar. Maybe I will start out by saying that this is a totally new branch of research for me, and one that I'm kind of learning as I go. So it will be really, really valuable to get input from an interdisciplinary group of people, because I think that there are elements of this kind of research that would really be of interest to such a diverse group like this. So the title of the paper that we're working on is called History, Trust in Institutions, and Regulatory Compliance. And we'd like to study the extent to which historical factors can be quantitatively identified with contemporary levels of social trust. Okay? Trust in your neighbors, trust in institutions, trust in science, whatever. We have a range of measures of trust that we're looking at. And then the second step is, to what extent does this trust in social institutions or society writ large correlate with individuals' willingness to comply with government regulations? Okay, so to what extent do historical factors determine trust, and then to what extent does that historically determined trust correlate with regulatory compliance? And by regulatory compliance, we're looking at things like are people evading income taxes, compliance with COVID-19 regulations, right? So are you wearing your mask or not? Are you breaking the curfew, whatever? Engagement in corrupt practices vis-a-vis the state. And so the history that we're looking at right now, and this is subject to change, are the historical borders of the Habsburg Empire. Now, this is interesting because there's a lot of variation around Europe in terms of when an area was dominated by the Habsburgs, for how long it was dominated by the Habsburgs, and then areas just next door that were never dominated by the Habsburgs. So what we're doing is we're comparing cities, if you like. Let me just go to a closer one. We're comparing cities. I should say we're running big surveys in these cities. So we're comparing individual level survey responses from people who lived in, for example, what's a good one? Varese versus Bahia. Yeah? So Bahia was had no historical Habsburg dominance. Varese was for about 120 years. These two cities are like really close to one another, separated by a mountain pass. Their economies are very, very similar. Many parts of their history are similar, except for this one element, being one was ruled by the Habsburgs, one was not. So we're comparing the extent to which very similar individuals in very similar cities have different degrees of social trust, and whether or not those differential degrees in social trust, determined by differential Habsburg treatments, are correlated with a different willingness to comply with regulation. So voila, economists call this a quasi-natural experiment, and that's kind of the vibe that we're going for. So I think I'm going to stop there. That gives you a flavor of what we're doing, and yeah, I'm going to stop there. Thank you.